Happy New Year, you guys. Happy 2026. If you're new, my name's Ange. Welcome to my channel. It's a little bit of reading, a little bit of motherhood, a lot of chaos, but a cozy type of chaos. And if you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. Because I know I definitely went MIA for a couple of weeks there. When I'm with my family and the holidays and like traveling back and forth, and the last thing on my mind was trying to keep up with content. And I really tried for Vlogmas, but I think I only got to like video 5 before I was like, this is entirely too much. I was getting really, really stressed out. It was impacting my reading. It was impacting me and like my own disposition. So I let that go. Probably will not be trying Vlogmas again because it's a lot of work. So if there's any creators that you subscribe to, that you follow, and they did Vlogmas, please support their channel. Even if you don't watch all their videos, just support their channel in some way because Vlogmas is a lot of work. And now it's a new year. And I wanted to start off the year with like a more positive video, I think, because I think my last video was like my least favorite books of 2025. I wanted to start off 2026 by letting you know which books I absolutely loved from 2025, and they are sticking with me. I can't forget these books. I can't get them off my mind. And there are even some of these that will be reread this year because I love them that much. I love them that much. I'm probably going to reread a couple of these this year. So let's just get right into it. I do have a handy dandy list that I made. Some of these months, it was really hard to pick which book stuck with me the most, which book I loved the most, but I think I did a pretty decent job with it. So starting off January of 2025, I read The Midnight Library, and guess what I'm rereading January of 2026? The Midnight Library. I love this story, and it's funny because when I first read it, I liked it. I thought it was good. I found Nora, the FMC, to be a little unbearable. She's a little annoying. But the more time passed after reading this, the more I couldn't forget it. And I realized that I actually really fucking love this story. Rereading it right now, I'm about 50% of the way through. It's hitting so much harder. Nora is a young woman who wakes up one day and, after a series of just unfortunate events in her life, she realizes, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And she tries to execute that wish. It leads her to the Midnight Library, where she has a chance to explore her other lives she could have been living if she had chosen to do things differently, if she had gone down different paths. And it is a little repetitive because there is a lot of like, she comes back to the library, she picks a new life, and she goes and explores it. But the message, the emotional impact of this story is just, it's incredible. Nora resonates with me so much. I think if you've ever struggled with mental health, if you've ever had moments where you didn't want to keep trying anymore, this is one of those stories that it might touch your heart. I know for me personally and my life experiences, Nora is really annoying, but it's because I can see so much of myself in her as well. And I really love the way the author put this together. It's not overly dramatic. I mean, Nora at times can be a little bit much, but again, as somebody who's gone through mental health struggles, I know that there were moments where people looked at me and they were like, you're doing a bit much. I just really enjoyed it. And I think it's the message in the Midnight Library that just resonates and sticks with me. And it's one of the reasons why it's my first read of 2026, because I fucking love this story. I love this story so much, and it's going to be reread for years to come. Honestly, I kind of want to get my hands on like special editions of the Midnight Library. And I think there's another book within this like interconnected series. I think there's another one, and it's about a train, if I'm not mistaken. I'm wicked excited to read that. Next up for February, I feel like I started off 2025 on a really, really, really good note. A lot of the stories I were reading were just straight bangers. A lot of them were also YA, but I feel like to start off your reading for the year on such a high note, it's either going to lead to like a burnout at some point, which I definitely did experience a reading slump halfway through the year. But I just feel like it's such a good tone for the rest of the year. Like it makes you a little bit optimistic to like reading books and enjoying them versus starting off your year and the first few books you read are just trash, and then the rest of the year you're like, well, everything's gonna suck now. But this one didn't. Gear Breakers did not. I fucking love this one. It's a YA dystopian sci-fi fantasy. I don't think there was much fantasy though. I think it was primarily sci-fi. Dystopian sci-fi, YA setting. It is sapphic. I really enjoyed this one. It's these two young girls, and they are on opposite sides of I guess the classes. The world, this society is split into classes. You have the upper class who has access to all of the resources. They have a much more cushy life. They also have access to Mecca, which I'm going to switch hands because I didn't realize the glare from the window. They also have access to Mecca, which are these big ass robots that they can like get inside and control. They use them to get what they want. They use them to conquer. They use them to oppress. And the other young woman in this story is one of those oppressed peoples. They fight the Mecca. They take them down in like really cool ways, like really badass ways, by the way. But I enjoyed this story. You know, you have these two young women and they come face to face and they realize we're on opposite sides of this war, or on opposite sides of this conflict. It's not really a war, but there's a connection there. Sona is the young woman who's from like the upper class and she can control and manipulate these mecha. Like she's trained to do it and she's able to do it. Sona kind of has a little bit of awareness as to like the inequalities that exist and the ones that and the oppression that she herself perpetuates by going into these mecha and oppressing these people with that force, that significant force. I just thought it was fantastic. As somebody who loves Attack on Titan, I love that like push and pull of morals. I just really enjoyed Gear Breakers. It's a duology too, so it's just 2 books. I think it was fantastic. And I would recommend this to anybody that wants to read a YA dystopian about kids who get in like fucking Transformers and just start fucking shit up. It was really good, you guys. I enjoyed it. It's like one of those like high octane action adventure stories. I enjoyed it, but there's also a lot of emotional depth to it. These characters, this found family, they go through quite a lot and it's devastating, especially because when I say they go through a lot, I don't necessarily mean like some of them die. They just go through so much that it's devastating. It's devastating, but I think it was executed really well and I enjoyed it so, so much. Now this is March, and this one surprised me, truthfully, like really surprised me. And to this day, when I think about this book, it continues to surprise me. And that's A Love Letter to Whiskey. Like, what? Okay, so this is a contemporary romance. Not my usual genre, but I do enjoy romances every once in a while. This is a story built upon miscommunication and angst and just like these characters are just unable to have a fucking conversation about the thing that is bothering them, the thing that's keeping them from each other. Like they're just not capable of it. And it's crazy because I don't like that. But there was something about this story that was straight up addictive. It follows B and Jamie. B is the woman and Jamie's the man. They develop a romantic connection and then something happens that they never really like flesh out, like the two characters amongst themselves. They never flesh it out. They never discuss it. There's never any discourse to clarify what actually happened. What the miscommunication starts very early on and it just continues and it's repetitive in the sense of like every time they kind of get to the point where they could talk about this thing to clear it up, they don't. And then it just further perpetuates the miscommunication. It was, again, it's really interesting to me that I love this story so much, but I finished this book in like 2 days. I could not put it down and I really enjoyed myself. Did I love their relationship? Did I think it was organic? Not necessarily. I feel like their relationship in real life wouldn't have worked because it was built upon a ton of miscommunication and not much clarification. But again, I just think Candy Steiner did something. Her writing and the way that she put these characters together and the way she built up the angst, it did something to me. Like I was foaming at the bit to find out if they were going to end up together because I didn't know if it was going to be like a happy ending or not. And that was, I think, what fueled me to keep going despite the fact that there was a trope in here that I absolutely detest. But she did a really good job. Candy Steiner did a fantastic job and I do plan on rereading that. This year, yeah. April. Now for April, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I loved the writing. I think that Leigh Bardugo is really good at writing like the human experience. Like I felt for Alex and the character dynamics too. Like Alex and Darlington and then Alex and Dawes and then Dawes and Darlington. I loved the way that these characters interacted with each other, not just with the main character, but with each other. I really enjoyed it. It is a little bit of a convoluted story, in my opinion. I do feel like upon a reread, I'm going to understand more of the plot than I did the first time. But ultimately, Alex is a young woman, a very, very troubled young woman with a very murky past. And she is all of a sudden chosen to go to Yale. But the condition is that she has to be part of Lethe House. Lethe House is one of the houses that kind of like oversees the other houses and how they manipulate magic to make sure that they are kept in line and that they don't abuse their abilities or their power, their access to resources. Because of course, it's not just an Ivy League school, but these houses also have an elevated status at this school. University, whatever. But yeah, it's like kind of like it's kind of like a murder mystery. And then there's another mystery on top of the murder mystery, which is like one of the characters goes missing. And we're trying to figure out what happened to him. And there's some shifts in time. Like you go back and forth, back and forth. You go really far back and then you go back to the present again. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it despite it being like a bit convoluted and just like all over the place in my opinion. I just really liked Alex. I loved these characters down. They were so good. I think they're written really well. And again, it's the character dynamics. It's the way they interact with each other, both on page and off page. It felt like I was reading a story. You know, like it really did feel like somebody was telling me a story and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't wait for Deadbeat to come out. I can't wait for Deadbeat to come out. I think it comes out in September, if I'm not mistaken, like in the fall or something like that. So I haven't decided when I'm going to reread Ninth House because it is dense in my opinion because it's a little confusing. And I also have to read Hellbent, which is also a little bit confusing. Not in a bad way, just in the way that's like, I need to devote my brain to these books when I'm reading them in order to enjoy them for what they are, which I thoroughly did. For May, it's actually when I finished. May, I read Dreams of Gods and Monsters, I think it was, right? Yeah. At the culmination of the trilogy is when I realized I really fucking love this trilogy. Mind you, I loved the first book. I thought it was really good. The second one was good. It just felt a little long-winded. The third got confusing, but when it all came together and it all wrapped up, I realized I fucking love this series. It's a YA. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a YA, I want to say like low fantasy, because it takes place partially in Prague and then partially in this other place. This other mystical place that's completely made up. But you follow Karu, and she is a young woman in Prague, and she's kind of surrounded by like a very eccentric group of creatures, people, right? And she does something kind of weird for this group of people. Not her normal friends, like her family, I guess we'll say in this case. She does something really weird for her family, and her family's also really weird too. But she has an entire past. It's almost like you meet Karu in the present, but turns out that she has lived a past life. She is not necessarily that she died at some point, but she had a past life. And the first book, you get to meet her, and then you find out about that past life. The second book, you explore a little bit more of who she is versus who she was. And the third book just brings it all together. But it's very much so angels and demons. And Karu is the demon. I love this story so much. It's a beautiful love story between Karu and Akiva. I think their love, it felt genuine and it didn't feel one-sided. It never felt like Akiva was trying to force Karu into anything. It just felt really organic, in my opinion. I love Laini Taylor's writing, first of all. She's very flowery, very poetic and lyrical and all of that, almost to the point of being purple prose, I guess, like overly descriptive. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because right before it got to the point where it'd be a little too overly descriptive, she'd cut it back and you knew exactly what she was talking about. Sometimes authors will go a little bit too far and then I kind of forget what they were describing because I'm so focused on the description. Laini Taylor doesn't let you get to that. Like she didn't let me get to that. She always brought me back to the point before we got to that extent of description. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's one of those series that if you haven't read it and you like fantasy romance, if you like fantasy, I think you should read it. It's YA, so it's relatively easy to follow along. It doesn't feel too crazy, too convoluted. There are levels to the magic. I don't think that they're super hard to follow in my opinion, but I love this. I love this so much. I think that's what I just wanted to tell you, that I really love this series and I think you should read it. If you like YA fantasy romance, I think you should read it. But don't read it for the romance. Read it for Karu's story, because I think that Karu's story completely overshadowed any love between her and Akiva. I think Karu is a fantastic character. She is just, there's so much to her. She's so real and raw, but she was so young, but like there was trauma, but there was healing. I just felt like she was such a well-rounded character, and her story specifically, the one that she tells you, it touched a part of my heart. And I was like, wait, Karu, I fucking love you. Don't go, girl. Okay, anyways, I was trying to like reorient myself because of the glare from the window, but it's not working. So what is this, June? Yeah, June, Love in Other Words. Again, another one that is kind of based on miscommunication. Like Macy and Elliot meet when they're kids, basically. Like her and her dad go to this like lakeside cabin or like a retreat or something like that. And Macy finds Elliot in the closet of the room that she picks for herself. And he's like in there just chilling, reading. I love Elliot so much. And they develop a relationship and she gets to know his family and like there's a real connection there between them. They get older because they meet when they're kids, and as they get older, something happens and Macy and Elliot kind of break contact. And there's a very specific reason why they break contact, but at no point in time until the end do you find out that it's something that could have been resolved if they had just kind of like talked a little bit. But then I guess you wouldn't have the book, right? Like that's always the thing with miscommunication. If they had talked it out, if they had had that discourse, there would be no book, there'd be no story. So whatever, it's fine. I guess when I think about it, it's fine, it makes sense. But I loved them so much. Macy got on my nerves a couple of times because it really felt like she wasn't even trying anymore. But again, Elliot was just, he was yearning. Like they meet later on in life after a long time of like no contact, and Elliot is still yearning for her. Like he still wants the best for her. He still cares for her. And at no point in time is he trying to convince her that she needs to feel the same way that he does. It's almost like he would be okay as long as they were friends. He'd be fine as long as he got to keep her in his life in any degree. I love fictional men like that. Men who don't feel the need to like force the FMC into anything or force her to feel the same. I really appreciate that. I respect that because, okay, it's a fictional person, but like in real life, I would want the same. Like, I don't want to feel a way for you because you made me feel that way, if that makes sense. Again, I think that our own lived experiences follow us into every story we read, no matter what you do, because it's your lived experience. It's how you interpret the stories that you're reading. I really enjoyed Love in Other Words. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful. It made me fucking cry at the end. I sobbed. It was emotional destruction, but I enjoyed it. And I loved the writing in this one. Now, we are up to one of our contenders for my favorite book of 2025. My favorite book potentially of all time. One of the contenders is Fable. Oh, and this is for July, by the way. Oh my God. I have a hard time talking about Fable because it tore me apart. It tore me apart, and I haven't entirely been put back together yet. I loved it. I loved it so much. I was reading the Poppy War trilogy. I got to the second book. I don't remember what it's called. And I just was not happy. I wasn't happy. I didn't love what the characters were doing in that second book of the Poppy War trilogy. So I decided to put it on hold, and I said, I'm going to read Fable instead. I want to read something else by R.F. Kuang to see, is it the way that they execute stories, or is it just that that story doesn't work for me? R.F. Kuang said, sit the fuck down, bitch. Sit down. I'm about to school you. This was incredible. I have nothing that I could ever say about this book to be like, oh, it needs nothing. Nothing. This was an all-around perfect story in my mind. You follow this group of young adults. The main one is Robin. And all of these young adults are from other countries. And they're taken from their countries. They're taken from their families, what they know. And they're brought to Oxford. And they're made to feel like they have an elevated status in society because they were taken from their destitute family and taken from these poor villages and brought to this fantastic school where they're going to learn language and they're going to use language to perpetuate the magic and blah, 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 blah. Come to find out, it's just a story about like colonization and oppression. It is a highly, highly, heavily academic. It is based on linguistics. There are footnotes, which I think I did it with the narration, with the audiobook, and I think the narrators did a fantastic job because there was a different narrator for the footnotes, and it was just fantastic. It was phenomenal. I think if you're going to read this and you're a little intimidated, just pick up the audiobook as well. Get the audiobook as well because it's going to help so much, and it's going to keep you engaged. I was fully immersed in this story every single time I was in it. I did drag it out though because I could tell. I was like, this is gonna hurt. I could feel that it was gonna hurt, and I was like, well, let me stall a little bit because I'm scared because I'm a baby back. I loved it. I loved it. I loved the message. I loved the emotional impact. I loved the found family. The characters that you hate, you absolutely fucking detest them. But it's not because R.F. Kuang is telling you to detest them. It's just because I, as the reader, could tell what they represented. I could see what they stood for, and I hated everything about them. I genuinely detested them with all of my being. And the characters that I loved them. I loved how nuanced they were. I loved how raw they were. It's one of those stories where you watch the characters go through a lot of turmoil. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? How can I be better? Do I want to be better? Am I okay being like complacent and just sitting here and settling? Do I want more? How do I get more? It was just so many, it was just so many warring emotions while I was reading this. It was incredible, you guys. This is another one that I plan to reread. I just need to prepare myself emotionally because even though I know how the story goes and I know the devastating parts, I feel like it's going to devastate me even more a second time around because I'm going to be that much more connected to the characters and to the story. I'm scared. I'm really scared actually, but I'm excited to read it. This is one of the contenders for my favorite books of all time. And there's another one on the list too, The Midnight Library. I can't decide if like which one of those books I loved the most because I love them so much. They altered me as a reader in a way. Both of those books changed how I was consuming stories after I read them. And that doesn't happen often. It's not often that you read something and it changes you as a reader. So when it does happen, you're like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. So I just keep rereading this for the rest of my life. After Fable, we have August. And interesting enough, August is when I start fall season. The fall starts for me sometime in August, usually towards the end of August. I'm not waiting until October or September, whenever it officially starts. So I read Empire the Vampire. This book intimidated me for years. I have been scared to read this book because one, it's like Bible pages. They're so thin and the words are so small. And I just was intimidated because I didn't really feel like there were many people talking about it. I still wasn't in the circles where people were talking about it if they were, but I picked it up. I randomly went to the bookstore one day and I said, I'm going to read it. And then I read it and I fucking loved it. It's incredible. You follow Gabriel de Leon, and he is a half vampire hunter. He's part of the Silver Saints Order. You know, it's just so interesting to see him hate such a big part of himself. Like, he hates the part of himself that is a vampire, but it's also the part of himself that makes him able to hunt vampires. It's such an interesting, like, internal dynamic that he has with himself. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a story where he is captured and he is telling a vampire historian his life history. They want to know how the greatest Silver Saint of all time, how he came to be where he is and who he is and exalted as he is by other vampire hunters. So it's kind of like a story within a story, and you do go from past to present, but primarily you're in the past, in his story, in his history, I should say. And it's just an incredible story, especially because as you read, like I've gotten to the second book, I'm scared to read the third, if I'm being frank. As you continue on to the second book, you get so much more perspective. There's a new POV in the second book, and I kind of hated it at first, but then that POV made me question things that I thought were just concrete. Like, I knew this deep down inside. You can't tell me different. I was questioning them when I got to the second book, and I think that it's because this book set such a strong foundation. Like, you really feel like you end this book and you know. I felt like I knew without a doubt. And then you keep going in the series and it's like, wait, I don't think I did know. But also, like, can I find out? Like, can you tell me? I think it's incredible. I think Jay Kristoff, he writes dark fantasy, but with like really dark humor attached to it. Because they're funny in this, but like in a really dark way. Like, you have to be open to that kind of humor. I don't know, the way he balanced like the dark world and this funny character was just... It was really interesting. It almost makes me think of, and I've never read anything by Joe Abercrombie, but when people talk about that author, that's kind of like, I feel like I could see me liking that because I loved Jay Kristoff's character work so much. And it sounds like they're kind of like similar in that sense, where like they have these very serious stories, these very high stakes, but then you have these characters who just like can't help but be snarky assholes sometimes, and it's funny. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. I am so scared to read Empire of the Dawn. I'm terrified because of the way that Empire of the Dam ended. I don't know if I can do it. I just have trust issues at this point because authors love to rip my heart out. And I just keep going back every time, like, give me more. So we just did August. We are on to September. Now, September, I was in like the deep down under of spooky season already because, again, I just am like ahead of the game when it comes to seasons and stuff. Anyways, I got to read an arc of this before it came out. The Monsters They Made Us by Frank J. Camacho. It's really good, you guys. I love this story so much that I have the ARC copy that I was gifted. I have a paperback copy I purchased, and I also have the hardcover copy. It's an indie author, so I feel like when I love an indie story a lot, I just want to support as much as I can. So I do tend to buy like all the versions of their books if I can. I can't help it. Anyways, this is a lot of fun. This was a ton of fun, but it also held a really good message in my opinion. So you follow Dorothy. She's a young woman who has something very traumatic happen, and you kind of get a gist of it in the beginning. Very traumatic, and I think that it kind of like almost awakens something in her potentially, but you follow her as she goes from this traumatic event to a new town, this very creepy gothic seaside Driftmore town, and she goes to the Driftmore Academy, which is also very gothic and creepy. Now, in this town, there are certain families, founding families, that they have special abilities, and they also have a lot of like status. They have a very elevated status, I should say, in this town. So they're kind of like the elites of Driftmore. I really did feel like Dorothy kind of had her own thing going on at first. And yeah, she was meeting some of those other main characters, but it wasn't necessarily like that her story was based on those interactions or like based on those characters, if that makes sense. But as you continue reading, you find out so much more about these kids. You find out so much more about them and their abilities and their histories. And you have no idea what the fuck is going to happen in their future, which is book 2. Like, it's one of those rare stories where it's character driven, but you also don't fully know your characters, and like not in an unpleasant way. I enjoyed that. I like the fact that the book ended. I can't tell you if Dorothy's a good guy or a bad guy. I can't tell you if Lola's gonna be, if she's even gonna be around in book 2, because my girl was going through it. She was going through it. I love Lola so much. I can't tell you anything concrete about these characters except for maybe like the most generic facts. I like character-driven stories like that. Sometimes if it's not done well, it'll feel like none of your questions got answered, and it was kind of like, what was the point of the book? In this one, you get a lot of answers when it comes to the magic system, when it comes to these found families. You get a lot of answers when it comes to the abilities that some of these people have. But the question as to who these characters are is left open-ended. And I like that because it means that there's so much potential for the characters. And I think it fits the story as well, because based on their age, it almost feels like anything concrete wouldn't be that realistic. And I know it's fictional, but like it wouldn't be realistic for these young adults to suddenly like they know everything they are going to be and what they want and what they're going to do. It doesn't feel realistic because at their age, I was fucking a fish out of water. It's also one of those books that's perfect to read at night because it just, I don't know, like the vibes in this one were just so spooky. And it's not a horror or anything, but it just felt really eerie at times. And I was like, whoa, is this something else? I enjoyed it. And it's not often that you get to see some of these creatures like sirens. There were hellhounds. There's an immortal almost. Like there's just so many cool creatures in the story too. I really enjoyed it. And I can't wait for the second book. The author just released the title of the second book. And I'm really excited to see the cover because there's so much detail in it, and it's details that play into the story. All right, so that was September. For October, The Second Death of Locke. So this one, I don't remember if it came out in October, if it came out in September or something, but it was a new release. I don't often read things right when they come out. I tend to maybe get it when they come out, but then I don't touch it for a while. It was a September release. I went and I grabbed it because the people that I saw talking about it said that it was full of yearning and tension and all this and that, and it was like a true love story. It's a friends to lovers type of romance. This was actually like, it wasn't exactly what it was advertised to be, in my opinion, as somebody who's read it and was craving something, and it did deliver. It did deliver on what I was craving. I don't know that I would necessarily say it's like tension. I think there is I don't even think it's a slow burn. I think there is yearning, but it's a yearning that's like pre-existing when the story starts. Like the story starts and these people are yearning for each other already. I still really enjoyed it. I fucking love this story. I thought it was so good. The ending kind of threw me for a loop. I didn't love the ending, but I still enjoyed everything else about the story. It's a story about Gray, who is a knight, and her mage, Kier. They're friends. So they've been friends for years and years and years. Then they decide to become mage and knight. And this is an interesting dynamic because Kier is the magic user, but Gray, the knight, she's the magic well. So he can't use magic unless he can't manipulate magic unless he pulls the magic from Gray. And Gray is like the last person on Earth who can control or who can supply magic, something to do like in that regard. She's the last one. So if she dies, magic is gone. But nobody else knows this except for the two of them, which is why I guess they have such a close connection. It's because Kier knows this about Gray and he's keeping her secret. It was a really interesting dynamic, but like there is a lot of yearning because you start the story and you can tell that these two people care about each other and they just haven't acted on it. This is very poetic and it's very lyrical in the way that the author kind of like paints this picture of yearning between these two characters, but it's almost immediately recognizable that they care about each other and they want to be together, but for some reason they aren't together. I don't know. And then when they do get together, you're kind of like, well, what was holding you back before? It was really interesting. I enjoyed it though. I had a great time. I loved it. I just feel like yearning in fantasy romance and romantasy is so rare these days. It almost feels like a lot of these books have the tag of like yearning and slow burn and this and that. But then, like it's a trilogy and in the first book they're together. But they just go through a lot of in book 2. I'm like, that's not really yearning in my opinion. Yearning to me is like they're not together, but they want each other until like the 3rd book. Like part of the resolution of the story is them getting together. So lots of yearning, not that much tension outside of like the tension of wanting something and not wanting to like speak up to get it, that kind of tension. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it had a healthy plot to go with a healthy romance. I do feel like we lost ourselves in the sauce a little bit at the end, but it didn't take away from the quality of everything before that, in my opinion. So this is my favorite book of October. I had to look down and check. My favorite book of October. I loved it. Okay, so this is something that Gray says to Kier at one point. She says, I would never ask you to give up everything. He said, you wouldn't have to. Anyways, on to November. November was a part of the reading slump. There were a couple of these months I was in a reading slump. I was in a reading slump of reading slumps. And November was kind of like peak reading slump where I just was struggling all around to find something to read, to enjoy what I was reading. It was really, really hard. And I almost had to like reset my brain in a sense. But something I did read in January was The Bear and the Nightingale. I've heard about this series for a super long time. Everybody recommends it for the winter. It's fantastic. Well, the first book is so far. In The Bear and the Nightingale, you follow Vasya. She is a young girl. She's a little girl when you meet her. And she lives in this Russian village. It's like set in the past and deep winter. So just, there's no phones and shit. But in this village, or just in the country, right? Like in Russia, they have these like smaller gods, kind of like these smaller deities that they will give offerings to, right? Like the god of the earth, Hearth, Herth. I don't know how to say that. It's like herbs. Anyways. And they'll leave stuff, right? And there's the god of the woods, and there's like a little god of the doorway or something like that. And the point is that they leave little offerings, small things, for these gods as appreciation to keep them protecting the people, basically. At the same time, you have a religious sect that doesn't like that. They want everybody to worship the one God that they believe in. And it's awful. It's just, I hated that part of it. I don't have religious trauma per se, but I just hate what I see when it comes to religion most of the time, to be honest. But anyways, so Vasya's dad, her mom dies and her dad remarries. And he remarries this woman who has the same abilities as Vasya to see these small gods. But where Vasya kind of like embraces it and she uses it to get closer to nature, to get closer to these gods, right? In a spiritual level, this woman, her stepmother, is terrified and she's fucking crazy. Honestly, she's like absolutely loony. I don't know why, and I know why they got rid of her, like why they sent her to live with Vasya and her dad, but like, she was crazy. But this woman also comes with a priest. There's a priest that's sent with her to the village, and the priest obviously wants all of the people in the village to worship the god that he worships. What ends up happening is that the people stop making offerings to the smaller gods, and things, unfortunate things start to happen because you're not saying thank you to the gods that were protecting you. So they're not going to keep protecting you after that, right? But you follow this story, and Vasya, you get to see her grow up into a young woman, and she just remains clever and spunky and feisty and full of life, even though she's very much so aware that she was born into a world that intended to cage her from the very start, both because she's a woman and then because she has these abilities. It's never something that she struggles with per se, like she just knows that is what is going on, but she fights it. And I say when she struggles with it, it's not like she ever feels like, oh, well, maybe I should just give in. She's always at the ready to fight for herself, to fight to keep her own individuality. And I love her so fucking much. I loved Vasya start to finish. I think she's one of those main characters that just is kind of perfect in a sense, because they're not perfect, right? Like, she is a little rude and she is a little quirky and she has moments where I'm like, why are you doing that? But she just is so confident. And again, like, she's so clever and street smart and respectful and considerate, but she also is not afraid to be selfish. I loved Vasya so much. Between Vasya and another character in this story that I won't talk about because I feel like you just need to meet them on your own and create your own opinions, come up with your own opinions, whatever. But between her and that character, and then the writing style, the tone, the atmosphere, the setting, the magic system, this was perfection. I do think, I will say this, right, as a disclaimer. If I had read this at any other point, I maybe would have thought it was boring. I would have said it was too slow paced and I would have put it down and never picked it back up again. It is a book that you have to be, like, you have to want something slower paced. You have to want something that's a little bit more character driven than necessarily even plot driven, in my opinion. Like, the plot is there and it's important and it's healthy, but I feel like Vasya drove this story from start to finish. Like, she's the reason I kept reading. This was perfection. This was perfection, especially in a moment where I wanted something wintry. I wanted something a little bit dark, but still somehow whimsical. I wanted so many different things. I didn't even know what I wanted all the way. And Catherine Arden said, well, look, I got what you want. I know you don't know what you want, but I know what you want. And she served. It was fantastic. I can't say anything about it. I didn't like the dad. I was going to try to hold that in. I don't know why it slipped out. I didn't like the dad. And then after that, I went down a fantasy romantasy rabbit hole. Again, trying to cure my reading slump, trying to stay away from getting deeper into my reading slump. And it worked. I read a lot of good fantasy romance in December. My favorite being Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This is my first Adrienne Young book. I absolutely ate up her writing. I love the way that she tells a story. I love the way she describes things. It's lyrical. It's beautiful. It sometimes feels a little long-winded, but kind of like Laini Taylor. Like, it's never long-winded to the point where you are annoyed or like exasperated. It's just, she's taking her time. Like, she's taking her time to tell you a story. She's taking her time to describe things to you. And I enjoyed it. I like sat down every time and I was like, yup. In this story, it's kind of like, is it like Greek? I think it's Roman. It's like a Roman-inspired story. So, like, the setting and even the way they dress and stuff like that, it just is very Romanish. I don't know if that's how you say that. Anyways, so you follow Luca and Maris. They are on opposite sides of a war, of a rebellion. Luca is on the rebels' side, and he is more of kind of like a military figurehead, whereas Maris is on the magistrates' side, and they are the upper class, right? They represent the upper class. They represent that class that has access to resources, that is the oppressive. It's just awful. I didn't love Maris's kind of like she didn't want to leave the magistrates. I guess I didn't love that because it felt like they didn't really stand for much that was good, but I also understood why she didn't, because she wanted to see the magistrates be better. And she thought, well, if I leave, who's going to push them to be better? I sometimes don't love that self-sacrificing character, but Adrienne Young executed it rather well, in my opinion, as somebody who doesn't always love that type of character. I enjoyed it. I liked Maris. I liked Luca. I think what got me is that how is their love going to survive this rebellion, but what is their love going to look like? Like, okay, so let's say the war ends, right? And one side wins. What does your love look like at that point? Because your partner lost, right? Whether it's the rebels losing that kind of like momentum fighting for their rights. What is Luca going to do when his partner is a magistrate and he is the failed rebellion? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand. And same thing for Maris. Like, okay, let's say the rebels win. Well, what does your life look like? Because the rebels are killing magistrates on sight. They're just killing them. So, like, what does your life look like with Luca after that? Do you become suddenly a rebel and we just forget that you were... I loved it. I loved the intrigue. I love the fact that she had me questioning what it could look like. And this is a duology. There's another book coming. I fear I read this thinking it was going to be a standalone. And then I got to the end and I was ready to, like, out the window. There's another book coming. So we'll get hopefully some resolution, because I was stressed at the end of Fallen City. And I was annoyed with the author. I was like, what is this mess? Especially because I loved it all the way until the end. But there's another book coming. So it makes sense. And I liked it. I loved it, actually. I loved it. I loved it mostly because of the writing style. I think her writing and the way she tells a story is what had me completely hooked and captivated and just like in a chokehold while I was reading it. But also the fact that when the story ended, I genuinely am questioning like, how, and like, what does it look like when you, like, you know what I mean? This was fantastic, you guys. This was fantastic. And this has like a little bit of like yearning, but not a ton. Again, like you kind of already know at the beginning because it goes from past to present. It goes from present to past and then jumps back and forth a little bit. So like you kind of already know the connection between Luca and Maris. It's just figuring out like how did they end up where they are? That was my question. The story starts and I figured out like, oh, they love each other, they want to be together. But like how did you guys end up in these two opposing sides? But yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. So if I have to be honest, I don't know if I can pick my favorite book of the year. I don't think I'm ready for that type of decision making. I will tell you my top 3 books of the year in no particular order because again, I can't tell you which one would be the very, very best that I read in 2025. But I will say The Midnight Library, Fable, and The Bear and the Nightingale they cemented why I love reading so much. Like those books will tell you everything you need to know about me as a reader and what I love as a reader. And it's not necessarily because they had good love stories or anything like that. It's just they were such impactful reads. I just really enjoyed them. And I don't think I'm ever going to forget about them. That's why I love them. So those 3 books are my top 3. Like if you take anything away from this video, please go out there and read one of those 3 books because I can't stop. I can't shut up about them. But anyways, I will shut up. Let me take a water break real quick before I say goodbye. Yeah, it's good water. Anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking it out. If you came back, I appreciate you returning to the channel. If you're new, welcome. I hope you like the videos that you've seen or that you will watch, but I hope you guys have a fantastic reading year in 2026. I hope we all start off on a good foot, on a solid foot with some spectacular reads. I'll see you guys for the next video, and as always, happy reading.